2021 City of Hermiston Budget Committee meeting and Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting. Welcome. I'm Mayor Dave Drotzman, for those of you I don't know yet. This is our Budget Committee meeting. Hopefully we have one meeting planned. We occasionally in the past have gone more than once, but usually it's a one meeting Budget Committee. So we're going to try and get through all of that this evening. I'm going to get the mask thing out of the way right away. We are video recording this, by the way, so I want you to speak up if you have a question, please. We've got one microphone in here other than the one Byron's wearing, but it should be able to pick everything up. So that those people that weren't able to attend, it's an open public meeting, and so we are televising this as well, so they can watch this through our YouTube channel as well. The mask thing. So if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear your mask, okay? If you're not vaccinated, we encourage you to wear your mask, all right? Or if you feel uncomfortable, please wear your mask. We are still required to do that by law, so that's the status of which we're at. We're not gonna go around and check everybody's card. We'll take your word for it if you're not wearing your mask. I wanna start out by thanking Lily. If you don't know Lily, she makes the rest of us look good. Thank you for organizing all of this. Thank you for getting us dinner. I believe it was delish this evening. Yeah. So thank you, Lily and Delish, for the food. I want to also thank all of you, especially the citizen members that have volunteered to do this. We can't put together this budget without you. It's a requirement by law. And so we appreciate your participation, your willingness to volunteer to serve your community and help us pass this budget. I'd also like to make sure we go through, there's a lot of new faces here, and some of you may not know us, and we don't know you, and I'd also like you to know who the city staff is. So we have our A team in the back. They're our city staff, and they are the directors of a lot of the departments. And so I'm going to have them each introduce themselves so that you know who they are. You'll have an opportunity throughout this budget committee conversation tonight. If you get kind of some weedy questions, Byron may direct them to one of the administrators so that they can answer it more in depth for you. So we'll start out with Jason, Chief Hermiston in the back. Kind of introduce yourself and what you do for the city and kind of go around the table back there.
I'm Jason Hermiston. I'm the chief of the police department. Been with the police department for a little over 24 years.
Larry?
Larry Fetter, Director of Parks and Recreation, 10 years this fall.
Nate Rivera, General Manager, Hermiston Energy Services, with the department 7 years.
I'm Tasha Earl. I'm a Senior Financial Analyst. I've been here 4 months. Lily Armstrong, City Recorder and Assistant to all of you wonderful people. I've been with the city for 7 years.
I'm Clint Spencer. I'm the City Planner and the Urban Renewal Director. I've been here 22 years.
I'm Molly Croys, and I'm the Court Manager. I was with administration of the Judicial Branch for 20 years, and I've been here about a year.
Mark Morgan, I'm the Assistant City Manager. Been here about 9 years. This summer, mainly oversee economic development, then public works, water, sewer, streets, and then also our airport and our public transit programs, and then whatever else Byron wants me to do.
I'm Mark Rose. I'm the Director of the Public Library. I've been with the city about 5 years this fall.
Perfect. Thank you. One significant number or person we're missing this evening, Mr. Mark Krozik is our financial officer. The one night a year he's supposed to show up and be present. He came down sick this afternoon, and so he won't be here. Tasha, you might be put on the spot tonight for some of those financial questions, but this is City Manager Smith's budget, so he knows it in and out too, so he'll do a great job filling in for Mr. K. I'm going to ask also you guys to introduce yourselves. I'll start. I'm Mayor Dave Drotzman. I've been mayor for 8 years. I'm in my 9th year with the city as mayor. Go ahead.
Larry Langford. Been a resident in this fine city for 27 years now. Wife and I have been. Retired U.S. Post Office. I was a mail carrier out on the streets. I think I recognize a few of you from that. But looking forward to learning a little bit about the city.
Maria Duran. I've been a city councilor since January, so this is my first time participating in this kind of a setup, and looking forward to learning more about it, and thank you, community members, for being part of this process.
I'm Jason McAndrew, and I've been on the budget committee now 4 years. But that day job, I work for Utah Electric as their purchase manager.
Rod Harden, city council for 28 years.
I'm Arnie Stites, been in Hermiston about 3 years now, retired postal worker, and this is my first time, so this is all new to me, so good to be here.
I'm Lori Davis, city councilor, 11 years.
Nancy Peterson, city councilor, about 5 months. Spent my lunch taking an accounting exam, so big number day.
Anton Juanes, it's the second year I'm with the budget committee. He's been in the community for about 21 years.
Jackie Myers, I've been with the city for a while. Counselor.
Ryan Metzner, I've been in Hermiston about 22 years. Been on the budget committee for 7.
Philip Spicer Keene, counselor, and I've been a counselor since January. These other new counselors.
Sean Douglas, I've been in the community about 15 years now. Retired Saudi Aramco, and I've been on the budget committee several years.
Roy Brown, Hermiston City Councilor. I'm a teacher here at Armin Larvey, and I've been in the community for about 6 years.
Paul Magana, local resident for about 20-some years, and retired. And Mark was my ride.
I'm Josh Roberts. I've been a resident of West Umatilla County, Hermiston Umatilla area for my entire life, and I think this is the 4th year I think on the budget committee. So.
All right, I'm Byron Smith, the city manager, and I've been with the city about 7 years.
Daniel Wadenberger, cameraman and communications contractor with the city, and thanks for speaking up, everyone. Appreciate it.
We contract with Daniel's organization, PAC West, for some communications and legislative support. And so Daniel shows up for a lot of our meetings and makes sure that they're professionally televised and our message is being heard, or has the opportunity to be heard, by all of our constituents. So this is a public meeting, and part of that process is that we have to elect a public chairman that's not typically a city councilor or the mayor. And so we'll go through a nomination process, and Councilor Harden, he kind of beat me to the punch on it, but he has a recommendation already, I guess. Councilor Harden, would you like to nominate somebody for chairperson?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to nominate Brian Meisner. He's been around the block a few times, and he's actually served on city council, and he's also been on the planning commission, and so I think he's got a little background here. Yeah, that's my.
Okay. Got a motion and a second?
Second.
All right, then motion and second by Antoninus. Any other nominations? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Railroad job.
All right. Mr. Meisner, it is your meeting.
Okay. Well, we are all ready to order, I believe, and so the next order of business is to elect a secretary for the budget meeting, and I would entertain any nominations.
Just a reminder, I am technically the secretary,
That's
so
right.
I will take all the notes. All you have to do is sign the document.
Right, yes.
That makes a difference.
The only responsibility is your signature. I will nominate Antoninus.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? All right. We'll look for your signature without further ado, we'll ask the president to present the budget.
All right, is this working? Can you hear me? All right, thank you. All right, so appreciate all of you being here, and that's really what I want to. There we go. I really want to start out with this thank you to all of you, to the staff. Mark and Tasha did a great job preparing us for this time. The department heads put together a great budget, and I really want to single out Tasha. She's brought a lot. She's new to the city. She's learned a lot in 4 months, and she's brought a lot of good feedback into the process and what we're doing, and she's going to be a great resource for the city as we go forward. And then thanks to all of you for being here. I left this same line from the last presentation because, last year we were just kind of starting COVID at that point, but we're still not done. So it's still different times and weird times. So to start with, I'd like to give a little bit of background just about the city, the different things we do. This is just a word map, and I just tried to come up with a lot of different things that the city does, from sidewalks to building permits, citations, violations, water and sewer accounts, electric accounts. We do a lot of different things, and sometimes, I feel like sometimes the residents don't recognize the different things and some of the complexity of the things that we do. So I really appreciate we have a great city staff and take care of a lot of business within the city. Another recap just of some of the major projects that we've done. If you haven't been in the basement of the library recently, it looks a lot different. And so that was the first phase of a new city hall to provide some temporary office space with the long-term goal of really making the basement a lot more usable for the library. And we'll have some, we're hopefully making plans to do a second phase of that renovation to really make it usable library space, and will be a great addition to the city. And then we just started City Hall. If you haven't driven by, that's a big hole in the ground. And the thing that I was happy about is this week they poured the first section of footings on the City Hall building. So very excited to see that moving forward, along with construction in the parking lot next to or across 2nd Street there. And just to kind of let this group know, that project was kind of added to the City Hall project. It was a project we planned to do to renovate that parking, to enhance the downtown area. We added it to the bid process, but it isn't part of the same project dollars that are paying for City Hall. The Urban Renewal District, which we'll talk about later, is paying for that portion. So then we had some nice park development during this past year. We opened the Bark Park, or I should say unleashed the Bark Park, as our Parks and Rec staff branded that. We also are getting real close on Funland. This is a picture early on in the process. Now there's much more full of play items for the kids. It's going to be a tremendous asset for the city, and going to be very difficult to burn in the future. So, and then also we've really been ramping up our efforts to upgrade our infrastructure under the ground. You can see another big hole in the ground. This is over near 7th and, is that Ridgeway?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a replacement of a 100-year-old water line. It also involved doing some sewer work because they had to make some repairs, but just a necessary project, but something nobody would have really known about until their water didn't turn on, or it turned on really brown and dirty because the water line was compromised. So the difficulties we've had in putting together, a rate increase that a lot of people had concerns about, really this is the start to show the things that we need to address and that will help our infrastructure into the future. So now just to kind of give a bit of an introduction, I'm sure those of you veterans of the budget process notice the book is a little bit different. So we used a new financial software package called OpenGov, and the budget is just one piece of that. And really some of the value of this OpenGov software is to make this more accessible and available online. Just because of the crunch of time, we haven't made that available yet, but we think by the summertime we'll be able to have the budget available online. People can click in, you can see a lot of the details on a really much more accessible basis. So we're really hoping the printed book was a little harder this year, and so we're going to work on making some improvements to that for next year. But the other things this software will do will allow a lot more real-time monitoring by our staff, making sure that we stay within the budget. It will update on a daily basis. They'll know, if certain bills were paid, and they can see where they stand and where they can go with their budgets. And like I mentioned, an online budget in the future. But in the book tonight, there's tabs that we'll be using to kind of walk through it, and then the page numbers are in the bottom middle position on the pages, and we'll be going there. Then I'd like to talk a little bit about what's the difference between our city budget and a home budget. And one of those is, in cities we do what's called fund accounting. And even accountants don't like fund accounting. So, but what we do is we set aside different types of revenues and expenses and isolate them in a fund, and we have various funds, and we'll go through each of those or most of those. So for example, the utility fund is 100% the revenue from the water and sewer utilities. And that's where all those expenses come out of. So when people accused us, the city, of taking money to do this or that with those utility increases, we can show them that this budget that those dollars stay in that fund, and we can show you exactly where they came from and where they went. Another fund that we deal with is a little less clear, but we call it the reserve fund, which is really a savings account, and we fund projects out of it. So let's say the street department needs to save money for a new street sweeper. So every year they set aside a certain amount of money so that they, in 3 or 4 years, can buy a street sweeper. And so that expense doesn't happen all in 1 year and kind of throw our budget out of whack 1 year out of 5 or 1 year out of 7. So, and the other thing, the state of Oregon, I've worked in 5 different states. The state of Oregon has the most strict local budgeting law. They want to make sure we do it just like they want us to do it. And one of those things that's an oddity, and you may have noticed as you went through the budget, and I'm just going to point out one example, it's toward the back, page 127, 128. This is the pages for the Harkenrider Center Construction Fund. If you notice, for this year, we're proposing no expenditures. Last year, no expenditures, and the year before that, no expenditures. So we have to show these funds, or even if some smaller versions of this, not a total fund, but we have to show these for 3 years before we can not have them in the budget anymore, even though we're not using them. So you may have seen a few of those throughout there, and that's why the state wants us to show that, because we created this fund, we have to show it for 3 years. Next year's budget, we won't have to show this one. So just one example of some of the rules we have to follow. So then a quick review, the mayor kind of hinted at this, but what you have in the book and before you tonight is what we call the proposed budget. It's proposed by the budget officer, which is myself, and as we present that, we're looking for input, and this is when we can make modifications. We can make changes to the budget. But we will be asking, hopefully, for you to approve a budget tonight. And then that comes to the council for adoption. So we have 3 phases. We have the proposed, approved, and adopted budget. And that's, again, that's something that's required by the Oregon budget law. So I like to set a little bit of a background, the economic background. So this is a graph of our population growth, slow, steady growth. That's what Hermiston has been doing for a long time. And we went up 360 since 2019. It was last year's number, so in 2020. And we haven't seen the final census numbers, so the official number for 2020 will be different than 18,775. That's an estimate done by Portland State University that they do every year. You know, with COVID, I hope we get budget or official population numbers by the end of this calendar year. I hope so. I'm not sure when it will be. But the same pattern that we've been following population-wise has also been our pattern in assessed value. We can see over the past 10 or so years, slow, steady growth. Last year was the first year we went over $1 billion in assessed value within the city limits. We're almost at 1.1 billion for this year, and we anticipate continued slow, steady growth in that area. And the reasons why is, first, I think our underlying economy is still strong. The data centers, the Amazon data centers, have been adding jobs, slow and steady. They keep building new buildings. They just completed the campus that's at the south side of Umatilla. They're going to be moving to their next building down in near the Westland Road interchange, and that'll continue. We also, just across the way here, there's construction going on with a new warehousing distribution business. We've been working with them for a few years, and they anticipate being complete by the end of this calendar year with the building. We've been annexing new acreage, mostly for residential subdivisions, but continuing to annex more land, and slow and steady single-family housing growth. So about 100 new dwelling units this last year. So this is the one I've been sweating over. It's a big increase, $11 million. But we also this year are doing an extraordinary amount of capital projects. So we have approximately $7 million in a city hall project. The South Hermiston Industrial Park, also known as SHIP, is about $3 million. An airport project for around $1 million, and and then a number of smaller capital improvement plans in the water and sewer area. So I anticipate this number would go back down quite a bit for next year's budget, but we just had all these projects hit at once, so a 20% increase. And now we're starting, I forgot to point those pages out, but those are pages 1 through 6. Just starting kind of an overview of all of our funds. And the other thing that's right there in that same area, page to the left of page 1, page 20, in the Roman numerals, is our number of employees at the city. We have right now about 122 full-time equivalents. And I'm not sure which department has the .97 person, but we try to figure that out. But we are proposing to add 1 position in the water department, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to the water department. So the basic assumptions that we as staff start with are some of these. So first, we know what the vision statement, the values, and we know what the city council goals were. We met in January this year and have an adopted set of goals that we know that we need to be working towards and allocating funds towards. This proposed budget contains a 2.5% wage increase for all employees. Typically, that wage increase would go, or we would propose it goes into effect in July. The way the budget is set up right now is for all of the non-union employees, it would start 1% in July, 1.5% in January. And again, the reason I'm proposing that is just because we've had some challenges with our revenues for the last year. You know, again, just the confusion about whether we wear masks or not wear masks. I think we're going to have some uncertainty in some of our revenue sources going forward. And so this is what I'm proposing at this point. And then the other big factor cost-wise is our retirement, which is PERS. And I know when I say a 12% increase, I was happy to see that. That probably sounds kind of sick, but the last year it was 25%. And so we're happy to see it 12. And are you raising your hand, Maria?
How many non-union employees are there?
Oh, how many in the union, Chief?
23, 24.
So about 100 out that are outside of the union.
What did you do last year? I remember you postponed it, right?
Right, we ended up instituting the raise in January instead of in July like we normally would. So this year, proposing to give some in July and then the rest in January. And then the other shock on the other side, in 20 years working for cities, I've never seen a 0% on health insurance. So we're really happy to see that. That's another big cost driver. So now the general fund.
A question. Byron.
Sure.
Any explanation of why those two were so low? I mean, is it, there's some sort of state subsidization in there?
Yeah, on the health insurance, I think is just, I feel like the health insurance market has stabilized somewhat, and our provider injected some of their reserves to keep the rates a little bit better this time. On the PERS side, it was some legislative changes. Those were things like they basically took the funds for the individual accounts and put them into the base PERS account. And so that, I think that really was what held the rates a little bit down. So, okay, the general fund. If we turn to page 7 and there's a general fund tab, is the start of the general fund. And this is the fund that we pay for most city operations that people kind of relate with to the city. The police department, Parks and Rec, and then all of the administration. So in this fund, there's about a $1.2 million increase from last year. And the real reason, the biggest reason for this is the American Relief, what's the P?
American Rescue Plan?
Rescue Plan, thank you. All the relief and rescue, can't get them straight. So the city is slotted to receive 1.8 million. And even though right now we have not planned to spend that, we have to budget for it. So we have to say we have it and that we're going to keep it there and not spend it. Now we've talked with the council about some different things, but we wanted to wait a little while because there is a lot of other potential federal and state dollars we might be able to match and try to turn those funds up a little bit. Now, one thing we did ask the general fund departments is to hold all of the non-personnel costs even. If they had anything that was going to go over what they had last year, we had to have a little special discussion about it, see whether it was something we felt we could do. Because again, we weren't sure about the revenues on the general fund side. We don't know. You know, we had to cut all of our pool revenues. We had to cut all of our recreational programs, which bring in, they have costs associated, but they bring in revenue that helps keep the general fund moving. So the various departments, page 54 is the police department. And one of the largest single outside of personnel, which, you know, that's what most of our budget is, frankly, is personnel. But one of the biggest items, single items, is our cost for our Consolidated Dispatch Center. And we had another, what I feel like is a little large increase, 7.7% in our dispatch center costs. A little bit frustrated. We've been working with the county, trying to get them to communicate with us a little bit more and work a little bit closer, as we want a good dispatch service. We absolutely need that, and we just need a little bit better communication about, if they feel like they need new dispatchers, let's talk about it, and so we know. But we were surprised, and so this 7.7% is a little bit challenging for us, but otherwise the police department budget stays about the same. Okay, Parks and Rec, page 32. And really, we have funds, and then we have departments, and we have quite a few departments. So there's a Parks Department budget, there's a Recreation Department budget, there's a pool budget. All of those things we're going to kind of talk about them together, but they're on various pages in this part of the budget. But our approach that we've taken is we budgeted probably about a third less than what our normal revenue would have been from a revenue standpoint for Parks and Rec operations. We hope we have a better year than that. Things are looking like we might be able to have a pretty solid year, but we just want to be extra conservative on the revenue side. But on the expense side, we budgeted for the full what we normally would do for the summer, despite, if you're watching it all, that we're having trouble finding lifeguards. So if there's anybody in here wanting to be a lifeguard, Larry, you gonna sign him up? So we just we tried to take the conservative approach, lower on revenue, normal expenses, and hopefully we have a good year. We're really hoping that we can give the community some opportunity to be outside, and get back to some normal activities. So the pool budget's on page 36, the recreation budget's on 42. Those are the three largest. The pool, the recreation, and the parks budget are the three largest in this Parks and Recreation area.
So the pool didn't operate last year. What happened to the revenue or the money that was set aside for that?
Well, unfortunately, because of the timing of some of the closures, we opened the pool, but we had to open it with a lot of restrictions, and then we got shut down. So some of the expense we spent getting it open and everything, but the savings from not spending the rest of that would go into what we call our fund balance. So we start the year with a certain amount of money, and so it's in there that then at the end of the year we hope is either the same or a little bit better. Any questions, Parks and Rec wise? Jackie?
What did Fundland end up costing the city?
We, right now we're looking at 1.5, 1.6, is that right, Larry?
It is.
Okay,
We're nearly there.
so 1.6 million. And we have budgeted, this is the first place I want to kind of introduce the reserve fund. If we go back to, let's look at the Funland page on 97. This is where we would have accumulated, for example, we got an insurance payment for Funland. It goes in here, and this is where we would also have brought in the donations and then have been able to pay for the project out of this Funland playground account. And the reason we're anticipating that we're going to be done with Funland before the end of this fiscal year, or very close. But we've left a little bit in this budget, actually not for the proposed. We're anticipating to pay for most of it, or all of it, this fiscal year. And we're planning to open it, the grand opening July 4th, but June 30th, we should have all of our expenses, and so not budgeting any for a future year. Then if we go the next page to 99, page 99, it's under the category, we call it the Parks SDC, but that's the account we've used in relationship to FEMA and paying for Riverfront Park. We've had 2 floods in 2 consecutive years and have done FEMA projects out of this. And so we're anticipating we're going to relocate the parking lot and the playground in the Riverfront Park to move it out of the main line of, when the river floods, it goes a certain way. We've learned that in 2 years in a row. Only took us 2 years. But we're going to move those 2 things out of the way so that they don't get as damaged. We know that park is supposed to flood. That area has flooded for a long time. But this second flood we had got underneath the asphalt, picked up big chunks of asphalt, moved them around, carried them, it was very bad. And it was sitting, so that was just where the water wanted to go. So we're going to move the improvements out of that way, so in the future it won't damage things that cost a lot of money. We can just clean up and make it ready for people to use again. The one piece we will have to leave for a little while is the bathrooms in their current location. We hope to relocate them in the future, but right now getting a permit for a new septic field we think would be problematic, and so we're just going to leave it there and hope that we can get some additional funds to get a sewer line to come in that area and then move the bathrooms. So that's the plan for Riverfront Park. Any questions on any of those?
You skipped over the skate park.
Skate park, thank you. So that's on the next page, page 100. We have one grant that we've been awarded, and we had already accumulated enough to match that. And so as we come into the fall of this calendar year, we'll be working on starting the skate park project. Larry has renamed or rebranded that the Teen Adventure Park. So, but that's going to be located right across from the Public Safety Center, the police and fire stations. And we will start working on that. We have some preliminary plans, but we need to get detailed designs and be ready to move forward on that.
Byron, even though you put the Riverfront Park rebuild project under Parks SDCs, does the city have SDCs though for future park development?
Yes, we do. And this isn't spending any of those dollars. It's just because the first time we thought, well, it's going to be one time, and we didn't want to create a new account, and so we used this, and then it happened again, and so.
But there are developments that happen in town that pay fees into.
Right. So new subdivisions, new residential development, they pay a fee per house for what we call a system development charge. That's an SDC. and we're allowed to collect those, and then we're required to show that we spend them on park development. So we have a couple of new subdivisions going in that will have some park facilities in them. Some of those will be, some of them the developer will do some of the cost and we'll pay the rest out of the SDCs, things like that. So
where does that show up? The new SDC?
The new SDC, right now we don't have any, we don't have them programmed for any projects. The only project coming out of that SDC account is the Riverfront Park. But this is where it would show up if we were to, add make some additions to a park in, is it Legacy? No, it's Theater subdivision, or Legacy, which is the one up on Pumpkin Center and 4th. They're going to have some park facilities in there, but those will be those will not be in this budget year. They're going to pay for a bunch of those. So the library budget is on page 40. Really, that one is going to be staying status quo. No major changes. We have added some library hours over the past few years, but right now we're holding steady in that area. The next area is the court, and we turn to page 50. So we've changed the budget a little bit, and actually if we go to page 53 is where the expense items show up. If you notice, there are 3 I wanted to point out: interpreter services, witness expenses, jury expenses. None of those are super large dollar amounts, and we had been paying for them in other categories when we had them in the past. But we wanted to be a little more transparent, or just be able to show those expenses as we have them, rather than kind of burying them in another account. So we've just kind of gotten more detailed in how we're tracking those expenses. And the big item in the court is we're going to be finishing up our new technology, a new court management system, and at that we look to be finishing that in the mid-summer time, and we will then sometime in the future, or sometime in between now and then, be coming to have a discussion with the council about bringing back the processing of A misdemeanors, which for a while have been going to the district court, and we feel like we have kind of improved our operations at the court to be able to take those back and to move those forward. We have not budgeted for all of that, and so if we make some changes, we would have to come back and ask for some different things from the council. But that is a kind of an in-process thing as we work with the police department and the DA's office to move that forward. So now we've kind of highlighted, or we hit the highlights of the general fund departments, the ones that we see a lot of the public facing side of the city. Now we're going to go to the street fund, and again, this is another one that we do to make sure we account for certain revenues to be spent on certain types of expenses. So we get a share, the city gets a share of the state gas tax, and by the state constitution, those have to be spent on work within the right-of-way. So streets and roads, sidewalks, those kinds of things. So right now, the operational expenses are on page 65. revenues are on page 64. And right now, we don't plan any major changes in those operations as far as the street department goes. The capital side, we're also not having a big project as far as streets go during this budget year, or we're not proposing one. But on page 101, again in the reserve fund, where we are actually, one of the reasons that we don't have any budgeted large projects is we're saving money. So this is one of the revenue sources that had some impact from COVID. Probably was it the second quarter, Mark? Second and third quarter last year? We saw some dips in gas tax revenue from the state because of people's cutting down travel and didn't drive. Thankfully, we've seen that rebound to pretty much normal levels. But we've taken the approach on these major street projects as well as water and sewer to do a pay-as-you-go. So when we have a big project, we have to save up for a few years to be able to pay for those. The two things we are budgeting for, if you look on page 101, we have $125,000 for Gear and Harper Road intersection design, and then $100,000 in the North First Place reconstruction. So in the 2017, the state passed a big transportation package. We got an earmark for $4.5 million for the reconstruction of North First Place from Hermiston Avenue to Elm. And I would wager to say that that's one of our worst street surfaces in the city. And so the money we'll be spending this year will be to get the design going. Is it 23, 24, Mark? So fiscal year 23, 24, we would be budgeting to actually do the project. And so as we get into the utility funds a little bit, I'll talk about some preparatory projects, because one of the things that we wanted to do with a capital improvement plan was to make sure that we didn't put a nice street surface down and then a year later go in and tear it out, cut it to put a water line or a sewer line underneath it. So as we prepare for that 23-24 time frame, that road will get worse probably for a little while, because we're going to cut it up and replace water and sewer underneath it and everything. So I heard you say that, Jackie. So page 74, now going to the utility fund. So one of the things that stood out to me as we were putting this together, we hired a few newer employees that are going to be needing to get their certifications and so forth. So our budget is a little bit different, reflecting those things. But the biggest thing I wanted to highlight is, again, in the reserve fund, page 107, the capital improvement plan for sewer or recycled water. There's a lot of projects, because we've started to be able to save up money, and we can start doing some of these projects that need to be done. So 7th Street, East 7th Street, there's some smaller diameter sewer lines that are limiting the capacity that it can carry. So, for example, here, our sewer is draining down East 7th Street eventually, down to the lift station that's right at the corner of 7th and Main. and then it gets pumped out to the treatment plant. But there's a bottleneck along 7th Street where smaller diameter pipe was put in a couple different places, and so our wastewater superintendent gets a little nervous during the fair and rodeo because that's a lot of load on that pipe, and it gets close to having problems. So we're going to be working on that project. In fact, it's been bid, but it will take place later in the summer, and so the expenses will kind of cross over the 2 fiscal years.
After the fair?
I think so, because the contractor wants to delay that a little bit to the end of his window of work. So
Nice of them.
yeah. Then we have a couple of lift stations that are going to be that we're proposing to be repaired, or actually number 3, we call it the lift station number 3 alternative. So out in front of Auto Cool, underneath the highway, is a lift station, a sewer lift station. So it takes a big deal to have to shut down the highway, get down in there, do the maintenance, all those things that need to happen. So our engineers were looking at it and figured out that there's another way that we could route, because there's just a few customers on that lift station. So we're going to route the pipe over to a lift station that sits in front of Floyd Turnbull's chiropractic office, and we'll connect into that lift station. We can do it for about the same or less, is it, Mark?
About half.
About half. So we can do it for about half the price of the project, and be able to service them with that, and that'll also decrease operating costs because you know, the lift station we have electric costs and things that when it's pumping. So the only hiccup or the biggest challenge is getting a permit from the Union Pacific Railroad to allow us to bore underneath the tracks, but we'll be working on that during this budget year. Then the one thing we did as part of that capital improvement plan process was to take basically an in-depth study of all of the collection systems. So all the pipes that gather the sewer, route it to lift stations, and ultimately to the treatment plant. And they took a lot of pictures, and they're not pretty pictures. I probably should have put one in here just for fun. But some of the worst pipes are there under Elm and 395 at that intersection with McDonald's and Starbucks and the most traffic in Eastern Oregon. And so that's going to be, we're going to replace that main, but it's going to be a different solution. We're not going to dig up the road and do it. We're going to do what they call a cast-in-place pipe. So they can take plastic pipe and push it through the sewer line, and it expands out and basically lines the pipe and can be used again for 30 plus years. And they send a little camera down there, cuts out where all the connections come in. We're going to try it out at the City Hall project. They're going to do that with the line that's in the alleyway as well. But it's a great way to not interrupt. I mean, it's still going to disrupt traffic, but not nearly as long and not nearly as difficult because the pipes there are very deep. So then the last item I wanted to highlight, here's where we're starting to try to save money. So if we look at RWTP pump and motor replacement, RWTP membrane replacement. So we're putting away $100,000 a year to replace some pumps and motors at the treatment plant, as well as replace the membranes. That's the part that really cleans the water at a very high level. So we're starting to save, starting to put that away, so that when it comes time for us to have to spend $1 million to replace those membranes, we have it saved up and ready to go. All right, page 78. Go back to the operational budgets for the water department. This is where we're requesting an additional employee. And it's been at least 15 years since the water department has added any employees. And during that time, I would venture to guess at least 2,000 to 3,000 new water accounts during that time. So meters to service and additional lines and all types of things like that. So we feel like our staff has been really good at maintaining the system. But as we're committing to the community that we're going to reinvest in all this infrastructure, we want to make sure that we're taking good care of it. And a story that I wanted to share along these lines is we just did that picture I showed you was the Ridgeway water line replacement. And one of the challenges with that was we didn't know exactly how broad we were going to have to shut down people's water to be able to replace that main. And one of the problems was, we designed a system with valves in strategic places to allow us to minimize that amount of a shutdown. If there's a pipe break or something, we can try to tighten that circle around there that people are impacted by it. Well, those valves hadn't been exercised for so long or checked that we had to have a broad circle, and we started basically replacing those valves and whittling down to where we could keep it as small as possible. But that's really what we want to go back to is a stronger maintenance program so that we have enough staff to go out, exercise those valves. Most of them need to be exercised annually, so I don't know how many hundreds of valves we have in the system, but having enough staff to go out and take care of those things and then to make sure that gives us an efficient system. The water department will also be doing some projects. On page 104, I mentioned the City Hall alley line replacement. This was another project we kind of piggybacked on the alley, on the City Hall construction. Because we were going to disrupt both of those alleys, both on the east and the west of 2nd Street, rather than coming back 5 years from now and saying, hey, we got to fix all these water lines after we laid down a nice new surface on the alley. We're going to replace them. They may not be the top priority, but because we have an opportunity to do it as part of another project, and they would need to be replaced in the near future, we're going to be doing that. And again, like I mentioned, part of that is on the sewer side is going to be this cast in place plastic pipe, because there are so many utilities all around the sewer lines in that alley that it's difficult for a contractor to get in there and actually replace things, remove them and put a new pipe in. We're also going to be looking at a well number 6 backup generator in this time. This would be, I don't think we have any other well sites that have a backup generator at this point. This particular site is able to help maintain the pressure through a big chunk of the city, and that's why this is the first one we're going to put in a backup generator so that we can keep the pumps going if the power were to go out. And then we also have a couple of projects at Gladys and Maine. We're saving up to do those projects in a year or so, and so there's some money budgeted to go into those projects in the future. Any questions? Okay. All right, Hermiston Energy Services is on page 81. No major changes in operations. What we've been monitoring is the BPA's rate increase. What are they going to charge us to buy power from them? And right now it looks like the rate's going to be in the range that the rate adjustment that the council already approved is going to meet our expense needs, and also give us a chance to start looking at repairing some of the problem areas in the system. So the rate conversation with BPA went in a good direction from our perspective. Now on page 84, we have what we call the regional water system. And just to give a quick summary, this is a partnership with the city, between the city of Hermiston and the Port of Umatilla. It was built in 1995, or it came online in 1995. And basically we have 5 customers for this water system. The 2 power plants, Calpine and Hermiston Generating, Simplot, and Amazon Web Services, and the city. And so it's a little bit different than operating our regular water system that has 5,000 accounts, but it is we do it with the same staff, and we're able to, I think, do it more efficiently than if it was a standalone operation. So just some highlights from this year. Amazon has added, they have a contract with the regional water system for a certain amount of water. They've added to that because their the campus of the south part of Umatilla has increased their usage because they have 4 buildings built and they're operating almost at full capacity. So that's a good thing. They'll be using a little bit more water this summer. We also were able to work with the users to do a rather large rate adjustment, and the second phase of that will hit in the middle of this budget year that we're talking about. That will allow us to then start doing some of the maintenance that's been delayed on the regional water system. And so we have done a capital improvement plan, and we're starting to implement some of those items that need to be replaced. So EOTech is on page 90. Again, this has been a strange year for EOTech, to say the least. We will be working, what we have proposed is basically a status quo budget, but we are hopeful that we will be able to come to the city council after this summer and say we need to ask for a little bit more spending authority, because we've been able to book more events, and we're hopeful that will be, but we've budgeted on the conservative side at this point. We're also working to implement the site master plan that was just adopted by the council. We'll start working with the advisory committee to prioritize which projects to take on and to move forward with that. And then,
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the budget for last year and then the proposed budget, there was a transfer fund for TBA and TRT that are reduced. Are we expecting those to be reduced again this year? It's my understanding that those numbers weren't necessarily significantly lower than what we had anticipated.
Right. We left them the same because we wanted to, because we were looking at the expense side, matching those up. Those funds would accumulate in our TRT fund, and we anticipate coming to ask to go back to the higher level of those transfers, but wanted to make sure as we look at this, how our event venue is going to come out of this COVID situation.
And I don't see any proposal for additional buildings or facilities out here in this year's budget. I know the EOTech committee had identified kind of a plan or a path forward, and we've kind of made some commitments to the county and the fair to try and identify that. Are we going to start adding dollars to this budget at some point to build that out?
Well, that's where, we haven't had a chance to work with the advisory committee to completely prioritize which projects would go first. And so we will be, I anticipate we'll be coming back to the council with a proposal on a specific project and then asking to adjust the budget to pay for that. We didn't want to put it in here until we knew for sure what it was going to be.
Mr. Smith,
Sure.
what is TPA?
TPA is Tourism Promotion Assessment. So, and I should have said this at the beginning. I'm sure I use acronyms way too much. So, ask me what they are. So TRT is transient room tax. That's the tax. So a certain percentage that somebody staying in a hotel pays. But then to support EOTech, the hoteliers came together and said, we will support an additional tax, which we're going to call a tourism promotion assessment, to support EOTech. So there's actually $2 per room per night on every hotel room and every RV space. Actually, it's 50 cents on the RV spaces per. It's $1 instead of $2. But anyway, they so we use that specifically for EOTech. Some of it was capitalized so that we could finish building the facility to open, and another part of that was dedicated to marketing and trying to create events, bring things here that will then put people staying in hotel rooms and there replenish kind of that fund. So then we added two major funds in this budget. First, on page 135, this is in the capital projects budget area, a local improvement district fund. So we've talked about this South Hermiston Industrial Park, which is really basically across the highway from us here at EOTech. And we received a $1.3 million grant from the Economic Development Administration to put in streets, water, and sewer into an area that was lacking that. And this fund will be where the money comes and goes from. So, and the idea of a local improvement district, a LID, is the property owners whose properties will benefit from having now water and sewer running in front of their property and a paved street. They will pay a portion of the project. So we have the 1.2 from the EDA, and then the city and the county are going to put in a certain amount, and then the property owners will pay the remainder of the project. We had originally estimated the project to be around $3 million, and it looks like it'll come in a little bit under that, but pretty close. So once the final numbers come in from the cost, then we will basically assess that to each of the properties based on their frontage on the streets up in that area. So we've given them some estimates. We think it looks like it'll probably be a little less than those estimates, but and then they'll have an opportunity to either pay it off immediately, or they can pay it over 10 years, and the city will we will basically finance it for 10 years, and they'll pay all the costs. Any interest we pay, they will pay, but it gives them a chance to spread that cost out. And then the last new fund, I'm sorry?
I have a question. Is the money from the EDA, is that reflected in here anywhere?
This is actually our portion. It is what we see in the budget here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Okay. So then the City Hall Construction Fund is, if you turn the page over, again, right now, we have about 7.3 million budgeted. We know we're not gonna finish the project within this fiscal year, We budgeted the full amount that we have available, but we know some of that project's gonna carry over and some of that money will go into next year's budget. But this way we make sure that we're able to cover the costs and then we'll know what to budget for next year. Yeah.
Could you explain to this committee as far as how we're paying for this?
City Hall?
Yeah, so that, because the comments have been made that this is not going to mean more taxes because we're building this city hall. So
Right.
how does that happen? I guess that's a good thing.
Right, so
No, I mean,
let's page 125. So the city of Hermiston is a partner with Umatilla County in something called the Greater Hermiston Enterprise Zone. And that enterprise zone can offer property tax incentives to large investments. So the boundaries of that zone doesn't match up with the city limits. So the first project in the project monies that are paying for City Hall is a project at Lamb Weston. They made a substantial investment in their Hermiston plant, over $200 million. And with that, they asked for this property tax incentive. So what they do in lieu of property taxes, they pay us $500,000. They pay the county $500,000 a year in lieu of taxes, and we take that in through this enterprise zone fund, and that's what pays the debt on the money that we borrowed to build City Hall. Now, the county has also dedicated a portion of their, basically it's $15 million over 15 years, it's $1 million a year, that gets split in half. They've dedicated some of their portion to pay for our new water tower that got built in the northeast corner of the city, and then another portion of that to assist with the construction of City Hall. And so that's the financing mechanism that, you know, we have not dedicated any property tax revenue. It is all from the Lamb Weston project to pay for City Hall. All right. That's where we're at. Any questions?
So with those, I guess, in lieu of paying those property taxes, that kind of forces other departments or other, well, like the bond that passed for the fire department, because they complained about not enough money, larger resources, or larger DC, AWS. So if they're not getting that taxes, then they'll push a bond. So
Well,
how does that affect?
Yeah, so Mark, on the Lamb Weston one, that one doesn't address the fire district, does it?
Well, that must, you mean as far as bonds?
Yeah,
It
well,
completely excludes.
right. So the new value doesn't help the bonds, but the bigger question is, if we're taking away this, you know, revenue for 15 years from the fire district, from the school district, those kind of things, you know, we're having a negative impact. So we've been trying to work more closely with the fire district on these projects. For example, we have an enterprise zone agreement with Amazon for a new campus here in the city. And in that, we negotiated a base amount that they will pay to all the taxing districts, so they will start to get revenue immediately from the Amazon project when it starts. And then also a specific fee for public safety that we've asked, that they agreed to pay, that will go to the fire district as well. So, you know, some of the districts are, you know, a little concerned, you know, the fire district was able to pass a bond that allows them to meet some of their capital needs. But I do understand, you know, I understand their concern.
That doesn't take any money away from the city.
No. The bond that the fire district passed, now this goes way into the weeds. But, so property taxes are capped at $10 per thousand for general government purposes. But when you do a bond for a capital, it goes outside of that. So it doesn't, their bond doesn't impact the city revenues at all. If they had gotten when they formed the new fire district, it did impact city revenues because that was a new rate within that $10. And so it took away some of what the city would normally get from that $10.
One thing I will say, Jason, I understand the concern that working with the other special districts in these enterprise zone agreements is the revenue impact that it has on their budgets. And the one thing that we did do in this last LTRES agreement with Amazon is we did listen to that, and we did renegotiate, and I think we were the first group to do so with them to negotiate for the fire district. So there's additional revenues now that weren't coming out of previous agreements, and also for the school district. The school district is a little bit unique because they're held harmless. Their budgets are backfilled by the state. So even if we take money from them, the state's gonna still supplant their money. But we were able to negotiate outside of that, a special revenue fund that goes directly to the Hermiston School District, because that actually falls outside of the Hermiston School District.
Right.
The property does. So we were able to still help support our local special districts because it does make an impact in those.
Well, and if I can add on to that, moreover, it not only helped our special districts, but I think even the Stanfield School District also was aided in that. So this new, where the property is going to help more than just the city of Hermiston as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this will sunset after 15 years. When those 15 years are up, they're going to be paying the regular property taxes like any other business. But for them to start, to dig in, to get here in our community in the first place, that was an incentive for them to start here and bring all the jobs and bring everything that comes with it. So I think at the end of these 15 years, we'll see the sunset, and then regular revenues that they're supposed to pay will come in as well.
Correct.
I got another question, Byron.
Okay.
This one's going to be kind of off the wall here a little bit. But
Uh-oh.
Are we required by state to have a municipal court?
No.
So we do that just primarily as a public service, or why do we? I mean, I'm looking at the expense of our court system and the revenue that it brings in. I mean, we pay $600,000 a year to have a court system. What is the benefit to the community in having that?
Well, I'll take a shot, and then I know Molly will have an opinion as well. But you know, one of the things that is a big factor in my opinion is that we process and can take care of things much quicker than the state court system. So, for example, right now it might take 250 to 300 days to take care of a DUI. If we take them back, we will shorten that at least in half, I would say, most of the time, if not even better. And so a little bit more of a quicker justice, I think that provides a benefit. And I think just bringing that closer to the people, again, it's someone, you know, they can go right there. It's maybe somebody that's their neighbor that's there in the office or whatever. I think there's some value to that. It's a little bit hard to put a dollar value on it. But.
Do courts ever net neutral?
Yeah, and I think, you know, we're not supposed to think about revenue when we talk about courts. We get in trouble if we do that. But if we go down the path that we're working towards with bringing back A misdemeanors, we will get pretty close to break even, if not better, with that. That's what the numbers looked like in the past when we did a misdemeanor, so I think we'll be there. Molly, do you have anything to add?
I think about every citation that comes in, 50 has to go to the state, 16 goes to the county, and the rest comes to the city. You right off the top would lose all that revenue. So if you have every A violation is 440, the next one down is 265, then 165, and even like a 125, all that revenue comes in order to collect for the city. So straight up, not talking about revenue, I will do it on traffic and violations, you automatically would lose that revenue. We have the ability to then default at that amount and then send to collections and actually then get that. We now are sending them to DOR, so we're even getting tax intercepts. So much to people's chagrin, surprise. So that revenue is all coming in. On misdemeanors, it is, I've had this conversation for years with the legislature, it isn't about money, it's about rule of law. And it's about what you want to have as an organized city and what control you want to have as a city to be able to enforce the rule of law and provide safety for your community. And I mean, that's in a nutshell, right? So it's the expedited ability to do that, the control over having that, and being able to do that in a way that people know they're going to be held accountable, not be held accountable for the state. With COVID, they haven't tried a case for over the last 2 years unless they're in custody.
So that's, it does maybe cost a little bit to us at some point, but I think it gives a better service to the citizens.
Okay, thank you.
Rod?
Question about the senior center. Now, it's still not totally complete, right?
Correct.
And is there, and there's probably not a whole lot in this budget for it at this point. What are the plans as far as that being completed, and what's the agreement that we have with this because of the grant?
Okay, so the senior center was built with another acronym, CDBG funds, Community Development Block Grant. Came from the federal government. It's targeted to low and moderate income individuals. Seniors are automatically counted as low to moderate income. So we built that, but along with that, the city injected about $700,000 to increase the size, add the basement underneath the senior center. So we didn't finish out the basement. We just built it enough that we could be in compliance with the building codes, and we've left it unfinished. The plan has always been that that grant has a restriction for 5 years. That building can only be used for senior activities. At the end of 5 years, it can then be used for senior activities and other things. So our plan from the beginning was always to try to finish the basement about the same time as that 5-year window came up, and then we would have additional space not only for senior activities, but also for other city activities. Now, we also have an agreement with the senior center board that would dedicate certain times even after that 5-year window, that they would still have dedicated time for their programs and activities, and we would schedule outside of that and assist them in any way if they wanted to add programs. And we've also, just this last probably 6 months, they've requested us to provide a little more staff support to them, and we've been doing that, and I think that's been a positive outcome. But that's the story of the building. And that's one of the projects that I did mention to the city council as potential for the funds that we're getting out of the American Relief Fund.
How many years are we into that?
3 in September.
Okay.
3 in September. It was 2018, September.
I just wanted some clarification.
Yeah? Thank you. Yes?
So last year, there was a little bit of concern over the property taxes and maybe not getting all the property taxes due to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Is that anything we're gonna have to worry about maybe this budget?
It's still a possibility, but it did not, we didn't see any decrease really from this last year. I'm still a little bit worried just because we've had some, there's been so much federal stimulus kind of helping businesses and homeowners, but the talking that I did about the underlying economy, I think that is even better than it was last year, and so I think we're pretty comfortable with what we budgeted that we'll receive it. That was a great question.
In terms of the federal stimulus money, any that we've taken in now or plan to take in, are those attached to any ongoing programs that once the stimulus ends, we're going to be on the hook for as a city?
No, that's something that the council, I think we had a good consensus about that these funds should be spent on one-time projects or programs that we might, again, trying to assist some businesses that might be struggling or things like that. So we haven't actually programmed any of those into specific projects yet, but I think seemed like the consensus around the table, the council table, was that we would try to do those they would be one-time projects so that we didn't put us on the hook for something, that we didn't have funds for in the future.
I think part of the challenge with that, Josh, is we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to get CRP money as well and didn't see that either. So we want to make sure that the money's in the bank first. And then, as City Manager Smith said, we have some potential partnerships with the county. They got a significant amount of money, and the state, which has, again, said that they want to help support low-income communities, rural communities, the BIPOC community. And so I think there's some partnerships that we can work with there. And so we're looking to let them kind of develop programs that maybe we could partner along with. But we've got to see the money first, and I think that's where we have a little hesitation. The feds have promised it to us, but we haven't seen it. So it doesn't come in until June.
The time frame that should be the potential of mid-June is where we think it will come. The state can delay it a little bit, so that's why we're a little leery.
And personally, I'm on board with that. I think that's a wise thing, and I just wanted to ask the question.
Okay, yeah, great.
Yeah, I think a perfect example would be just like the grant that we got here from the EDA. That was also a match from the city, so in order to get that grant, we have to match that with ourselves. And so we want to try to see if we can match anything from the federal government, anything from the state government, anything that can bring a little bit more money here to build something, maybe something permanent, something like we've already mentioned, something with one-time expense, something that's not going to be reoccurring where all of a sudden when the money's gone, we just don't have any programs or anything like that anymore. So trying to make the best use of that money. And I believe we're going to receive half of the funds this June and then half the funds next year. So they're not all going to come in at once. They're going to come in half and half.
CRP stands for what?
Coronavirus relief, CRF.
CRF.
Coronavirus
CRP
relief.
is crop replacement.
Yeah, they're right.
We're kind of living in ag.
Yeah.
Making agriculture.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Anything that I missed?
When you built the budget, did you think of this cost of what kind of drew my attention was the chemicals for the pool, the rising cost of, I don't know how it's cleaned or bleached or whatever, but chlorine costs going through the roof, and I can only hold metal prices for 7 days now. I don't know if anybody really planned on that. You threw some extra money in for this operating costs.
No, that's good. We did, I think in all of the budgets that have chemicals, our recycled water plant, those things, we did increase those pieces because we weren't sure of those prices. So we were trying to anticipate that. We are running into the steel issues with the City Hall project. We had to redesign part of it to minimize the steel in it. So.
I did have a kind of random question on, and I guess more on the court side. Maybe Molly, you can educate me a little bit. I don't know if it's as simple as prosecution just does more work than public defense, but is there a reason why I guess public defense or prosecution is more than
Correct, that's the highest amount we could tax, property tax wise, legally, and so that's what we're asking for at this point.
So I would entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. And, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then our bonded debt. This is the amount we're obligated to pay over the coming year, correct?
That's correct. On the bonded debt side, we only tax to the amount for the principal and interest for those bonds that were secured by general obligation. So this is the exact amount we need.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the bonded debt amount for $316,580.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and the budget, as presented, I didn't see any obvious changes that we needed to make or anything, so it was no mistakes or anything in it that we have noted, so I would entertain a motion to approve the budget as requested.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And this budget is, budget meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you, Brian. So, how's everybody feeling? Do you want to take a restroom break really quick, or you want to drive through here?
The second part won't be nearly as long.
Yeah, isn't this?
Clint doesn't talk nearly as much as that.
It's probably a 10-minute break.
Ready to go? All right. Okay, so we're going to open the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting for May 19th or May 20th, 2021. You guys are also members of the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee, just like you were on the Hermiston City Budget Committee. We also have to go through the same process to elect a committee chair, and so I would take a nomination for a committee chairperson.
I would elect Brian, he did a great job.
Second.
There you go.
Got a motion and a second for Brian Meisner to also be our chairperson for the HURO committee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Brian, take us away.
Okay, and again on the, we'll open this meeting, and we also need to elect a secretary, more formality, and so I entertain a nomination for secretary.
I'd like to nominate that guy, Tom.
Second.
Okay. Tom has been nominated and seconded, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and Clint is ready to go. So, it's yours.
Good evening. We're going to briefly run through the budget for the Urban Renewal Agency. The Urban Renewal Agency, for those of you who are new, operates as a separate taxing district within the city. It operates outside of the city government formalities and structures. That's why you're here actually acting as a budget committee for a completely different government agency, just like the school district or the mosquito control district has their ability to levy taxes. The Urban Renewal District also is operating as a taxing entity. how urban renewal funds work is it operates off a frozen tax base when the district is formed, and then the increase in valuation within the boundaries of that district generates the revenue for the district. So in our case, district was formed in 2013, had a value of 42 million at that point in time. And now here we are in 2021 and the value has risen to 55 million. So the revenue for the district is strictly off that difference of 13 million between those two values. On the good news though is that revenues run pretty far ahead of where we had predicted when we originally did our urban renewal planning in 2013. And most of that comes from having the $6 million hotel built, and put our revenues kind of jumped up quite a bit at that point. But that's very good because that gives us a good long-term health to fund projects, also gives us the wiggle room to consider amendments to the plan and add projects as it's more revenue has come in. Can also consider sunsetting the district early if we determine that it's been successful enough. So revenue for the budget, moving into the document, is going to be forecast at $240,000, and it'll be combined with expected $166,000 of cash forward, giving us a total budget of $406,918 for the next year. The expenditures, there's just a few line items in your budget, and you'll see that the first one in there is the non-departmental, which is set at $305,000. This area is used for two things: debt service and our cash forward and administrative expenses. So when you say, why is there debt service? The district was loaned money for the construction of the Festival Street, and the repayment of that loan fund is taking up just over $100,000, about $109,000 each year. We have a 10-year payback period on that. We're in year 3 of repayment right now. So that will take that money for the time being. And then our cash forward, the unexpended portion of the non-departmental, is used for our future project planning. So that's to build up a good lending pool, a good project pool. One of the main projects that we have still waiting is the Jumpstart Loan Program, which is a business loan program for businesses within the Urban Renewal District. By the end of this year, as we're carrying that cash forward, we should have at least $200,000 that we could use to start a Jumpstart Loan Program for businesses in the 2022-23 year. So we're hoping to use this year as a building fund to provide a good seed money. And then the next expenditure you'll see is the parking improvement program. That was planned to be a revitalization for the downtown parking lots. What we're calling locally the Banner Bank parking lot on East Gladys Avenue, you'll notice is being completely rebuilt and resurfaced as part of the City Hall project. That's the parking project that we have had identified with our plan. And if you're wondering why the budget for 2020 was $600,000 and the budget for 2021 is $400,000, we're anticipating the parking lot will be entirely finished by June 30th. So all of that money will just fall off this year. So we actually have no budget for parking improvements next year, but there's a sizable one this year.
So is any of that being paid for, any part of that parking lot redo being paid for by the City Hall money?
No part of the parking lot is City Hall money. The utilities in the alley are a separate, but the parking lot is strictly urban renewal.
Okay.
And we're actually getting some beautification out of there too. We're putting in new decorative lighting. We're putting in trash enclosures to get the trash cans out of the alley. We're adding about 12 parking places. So overall, this will wind up being a good benefit when it's completed. Next expenditure on your budget is the facade grant program. That, for those of you who are unaware, it's a matching grant for exterior improvements to businesses within the district. It's been pretty successful. Most years we've been running close to 100% of funds being expended. Proposed budget continues on as usual with $50,000 that we've been maintaining. Last year we only had 2 applications come in. I think due to COVID, most businesses were not looking to redo their exterior when they're worried about where the next paycheck is coming from. Hopefully this year we'll see more activity. And then the third expenditure that you'll see is the wayfinding program, which is set at $48,500. The wayfinding program is designed to create a signage plan for the downtown, and it kind of expanded. We partnered with the city to create a signage plan for the entire town, but specific urban renewal funds can only be spent within the district. And so that $48,000 is set aside specifically for parking signage and informative kiosks that we're hoping to partner with the Parks and Rec Department for. The parking signage, we feel, has always been a very important thing for the downtown as a whole. All of our work groups that we've had with merchants and surveys have always said that there's not enough parking in the downtown, but in reality, there's over 400 parking spaces that are off-street. And so the idea is we'll have nice, consistent signage that says, here is the free public parking, and it'll be put in pretty quickly here, as soon as the parking lot's done.
I do have one more question. Because I've had this question quite a bit, the banner project that's going around has got anything to do with wayfinding?
No.
I thought not, okay.
But
It's related.
It's related, and part of the wayfinding program includes banner standards, and we provided those to the banner company.
Correct,
So
but
that
the banners themselves are not part of it.
they're not part of the wayfinding, but they're using the designs from the wayfinding.
Okay,
But the merchants are paying for the banners.
Yes.
Correct.
right. That was the part I was getting to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the very last item that you see in your budget is Festival Street Fund at $3,000. And that is our carryover every year for incidental and expenses related to programming on the Fenceville Street, bringing in entertainers. This year, I think what I would like to do is, once City Hall is either done or close to done, is bring in a contractor who's got a nice pressure washer and sealer and get it cleaned up again so that it complements the City Hall opening. And that is the urban renewal budget. I promised you 10 minutes, and I think we made it.
Clint, I have a question for you.
Okay.
The Jumpstart program that you had alluded to earlier in your budget message, is that different than, say, like the UEC business loan program that they have?
It'll be very similar.
Okay. So do we need to duplicate another program for businesses locally?
You know, that's an interesting question.
What's your interest rate?
I don't know how much use the UEC funds are getting.
Right.
And I mean, they haven't really been knocking down our doors to get loans. But I'm willing to consider reallocating funds through a supplement or something if we, because right now we don't even have the Jumpstart in this year's budget at all. So we can really dig into that.
Or something. Okay, I just, I know that the UEC loan funds just continue to keep growing, and that there's, seems to be plenty of money out there if you needed to get it. And so I didn't know if we needed to necessarily duplicate that, our own program.
Now, we could probably offer different terms, maybe more favorable terms that might interest more people, but, again, like Clint said, we haven't really even finalized the program and what it would look like, but.
Okay. And it wouldn't be like the facade grant, like where it's matching funds and some of it's free money?
It would be something that would be
They would have
paid
to be
back.
reimbursed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm assuming this Jumpstart is kind of like an incentive for businesses to come to our downtown, right?
Mm-hmm. How we had envisioned it when we put the plan together was really that the facade grant was going to be a exterior grant to beautify the downtown and kind of get everybody on the same page for how the outside of their buildings look. But our downtown also has a lot of very old buildings, and so the Jumpstart loan was intended to be, okay, you've got to replace your HVAC system, you've got to put in new bathrooms. These are very expensive things, so here's some loan funds to help seed those remodeling activities.
Question about the facade grant. I guess two-part question. How many businesses are in downtown right now that would be eligible for a facade grant? And I guess my second question would be, of those, how many have actually applied for it? Because if I'm not mistaken, there are only one-time grants for that particular building. and after that building gets that grant, they can't get, even if it changes over to a different business, right?
It's once per property. And that's because it is an exterior remodel, so tenants can change, but the exterior will generally stay. You know, I can't give you the exact number of businesses in the downtown. I want to say it's right around 200 who are actually eligible, because I think there were about 600 lots altogether in the district. And then we've done just over 20 grants so far.
Well, like 10%-ish. But
They've generally been right at the 10,000 level. Generally, most
10% of businesses.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
And also add that the UEC revolving loan fund is, to be allocated to a UEC member first.
Okay.
You know, I mean, but we've gone all the way down to Hood River. You know, it's,
You think you partner with your local HES energy district too? In the,
well,
you know,
I mean, yeah, that's what I like to say.
maybe we
but-
can work something out. I know a guy.
Yeah. Background.
That concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Clint. Okay, that brings us to approval of the budget as presented by Clint. And so I would entertain a motion to approve the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency budget as presented.
so moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And so at this time, the meeting is adjourned.
I want to thank everybody. Brian, thank you for being our chair. Anton did a great job.
But we need to see his signature.
Right. Well, yeah, you haven't completed your job, so you don't get a go.
I'm not done yet.
But thank you, especially to all the community members that have volunteered their time this evening with us to partner with us in this process. It's a valuable process to the city and our constituents, and we appreciate your time and energy into this process this evening. And hopefully, you found it entertaining and of value, and we'll come back and do it again next year. Same time, same place, about the same time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good evening,
Yes,
everybody.
thank you very much.